What's that?
Two people.
Two people. Would that be us? And somebody else?
I don't know.
Hi, two people. Mr. Gauchi and his woman waiting for. So we should probably maybe wait for a few more people and pray. Maybe once we get 5 people or so. Hope everybody's okay. Waiting for. So we should probably maybe wait for a few more people and pray. Body is settling. There's 5 people on now, it looks like. So anyway, so tell me, okay, hi Paul, J Buck. Hey J Buck, listen, we wanted to tell you because we already told Creedmoor. Creedmoor felt like, hi Robbie, hi Charles. Oh, the internet's running slow. Mine is ours working? Does it sound okay? Because we're having real trouble with it today. So if anything happens, can you please let me know, J Buck? Oh, great. And no audio? Oh, no. That's really terrible. Hey, Rahman Almari, you're going to be bye-bye if you don't get relevant to our discussion. You guys need a life. Go get a job or something. Either that or talk to me offline so we could talk about things that need to happen in your life. So you're not so bored to be able to be trolls on people's um YouTubes. Okay, let me see if I can connect this. Let me see you guys. Hold on a minute. Can you guys hear us? Are you there? Uh-oh, seems frozen, no audio. Darn. Yes, I can now. Oh, good. Please let me know right away, J Buck, because, but it is running right now. Is that a positive or a negative? Oh, Lord. Okay, so good now. Okay, thank you. Maybe we should pray, honey, because this needs to be a God thing.
Go ahead.
You want me to
Yeah.
pray? Oh, God. Lord, we're so vulnerable, Lord, even just in this crazy internet thing. Father, I pray that you would just really connect us to you tonight, Father. I pray. I thank you for your presence, Lord, for the image that you gave me today about your presence in our lives. And I thank you, God. I pray, God, that you would be with us. I thank you for your presence, Lord. You say wherever two or more are gathered in your name, there will you be in the midst. And I trust, God, that you're here with us. Lord, I thank you for all that you're doing and all that you've done. Lord, I pray that you keep us aware, give us an awareness for the importance of just walking close to you, Lord, getting our lives in order, Lord, and doing what's right before you, Father. I pray that you press us in. I pray, Lord, that this night is a time of edification for all of us. Lord, that you'll build us up in you, that you'll help us be mindful of your goodness and help us to be in an attitude of gratitude, Lord, especially when we get down on ourselves or down on others. Father, help us. Help us, please. We're weak. We need you. We love you. And I pray that you help others to learn tonight from what it is that you have in your storehouse, Lord, from Creedmoor, as well as those that are on here that are here to just visit and be blessed and edified. I pray, God, that you would really have your way in our lives, Lord, that you'll give people a hunger, a deeper hunger for you and who you are and who you want to be in our lives, Lord. I pray that you cause us to have the strength and power to release our flesh, Lord, and put on Christ, Lord, put on you and your sustaining power, Lord. Thank you. And bring us fellowship people that really want to go on in you, not want to play games with you, but want to go on in you, Lord. I thank you, Father, so much for your goodness to us. In the name of Yeshua, we pray. Amen. Hi, Kitty. How are you? This is Eleazar, Mr. Affectionate. Every single time that we go on, he seems to want to come in and say hi, Mr. Eleazar. Oh, you should hear him purring, you guys. He's such a love bug. He loves us in the evening, especially. Can you hear him, Daddy? You can even feel his vibration on you, right?
Yeah.
He goes, hi, everybody. I'm such a cute boy. He's my part bobcat kitty. All he needs is the cheeks. I kind of wish he had the cheeks, but he doesn't. But it's okay. We love him anyway. So let's see. Worked all through the prayer. Good. Is it working still now? Thank you for the sweet prayer. God bless you both. Oh, you too, Karen Jacks. Welcome, everybody. And Father, we pray that there's no interruption. We come against the prince of the power of the air, and we ask God that you would not allow any interruption to come into this meeting, not through trolls, not through people with unkind motives or thoughts. And I pray, Lord, that you rebuke anyone that's misjudging and causing any kind of disruption that would cause you to be grieved, Father. We thank you, Lord. And I pray that you continue to allow the internet to be clear in the name of Yeshua. Amen. Okay, 6:56. I don't know what that means, but okay. Yes, Lord, I pray for my brother. They're just asking for his pain level to go down because it's really excruciating apparently right now. The pain that he just suffered when he my brother just got major surgery on his back. This one doctor before this doctor did such a poor job on fixing his back that his left leg was paralyzed. The doctor wouldn't even talk to him after the surgery. It was terrible. But anyway, now he's doing better and he just got out of surgery and he's apparently in excruciating pain. So, Father, we just thank you for my brother, Lord. I thank you brought him through the surgery. We give you glory and praise and honor, God, for your our answered prayers, Lord. We all prayed so diligently, and I ask God that you would quell his pain, that you would cause his pain to be diminished, Lord, in fact, completely gone, where he doesn't feel the need to need medication, or even that you would do a miracle, even, Lord. I know that you're a God of miracles, and we receive not because we ask not, and we don't want to ask amiss, Lord. So I thank you, Lord, that you're going to take care of my brother and give him the confidence to know that you're there with him. Thank you, Lord. It's so weird how we all revert back to kind of our primitive sort of young when we're feeling insecure or scared or in pain. We all kind of revert back to our juvenile or young state, kind of want our mommy sort of thing, And he's not being that way, but he's a big, tough kind of guy. But I know that his wife was saying he's really hurting. So anyway, all right. So I hope we're still working. I'm gonna shut this down and open it up again because this one's not working. So does Creedmoor supposed to be on here pretty soon, and I don't know when though, because he told me he was not going to be here for a moment, and then he'll be back. All those like, subscribe, and share with you guys, please, tonight, just so we can keep this going. And also, there's 11 on right now, I think, and
This one's 15.
15. It just went up 4. All right, guys. Well, we're excited to be here with you. We're praying and hoping that God will have his way. And if there's any random questions anyone has, I was just telling people earlier, I got a phone call from a woman in the south of France, and she was saying how they have to pay that Paul Gauchi's method is so famous in Europe that they have to pay like $45 per square meter. No, 3 square meters for chips. They can't get chips. Let's pray that the people there will be kinder to them, give them the chips because it's their waste, and or at least make them cheaper. And then also the people will be able to get their gardens done. So, Lord, we pray for France that if they really want to get their gardens done, Lord, that you make a way where there is no way, have people even rent or buy. It sounds like renting a chipper would probably be cheaper to do than buying, right? $45 per
Yeah.
square. No, did she say per square meter, or no? I think it was 3 square meters. That's a lot of money. And she converted it to American dollars.
Hmm.
So anyway, it's nice to know that and it's cute because she lives by Switzerland and he's Swiss. So I said, he's part Swiss. It's so good to know that the people in Switzerland or by Switzerland are doing back to Eden Gardens. And she says he's really famous. Everybody now watches his videos on how to survive all the time. She says it's really funny. And I guess they watch it on Nick too, on Nick's channel too. It's really fun.
Does anybody have fruit trees? Well, my fruit trees are just loaded with fruit this year. It's really great. Just lots
Oh
and
my
lots and
gosh.
tons of pears and
Oh
apples.
my gosh. I can't believe it. Isn't it more than
More than normal, yeah.
totally? And I think the electroculture is working. I mean, I hardly anything's up on some of the ones that but they're sure seem to be working around my house plants and my potatoes outside. So has anybody else been doing any of the electroculture? I'm just curious to see what difference it might make in the bountiful harvest, So this is useless. I don't even know if I should use it. It might just be that it's not connected. Everything sounds good though, huh? So anyway, guys, tell me if there's anybody here that needs prayer. So we're just kind of getting rolling right now. And if anybody needs prayer, um, I've been crying a lot lately, praying for my children, just because I heard, those of us that are tracking with what's going on right now on the planet. This one pastor said that he believes there's 3 to 7 years before something serious shakes down on our planet. And I just want people to know God. That's my big thing, and especially my children. To know God, not just know about him and not just pretend to know about him and not just, be fake about it, but really know him. And 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 get rid of all their baggage, because that's going to inhibit their discernment. When you have a bunch of baggage, your discernment definitely gets inhibited, and you believe all kinds of things that aren't even true as a result of if you have unconfessed sin, or all this razzmatazz that we go around with. And that's why I'm really promoting a lot of deliverance right now. I'm really trying to get people to get their baggage taken care of. Can you guys still hear us okay? I'm not hearing anything. Do you think we lost him?
I don't know.
Well, do you guys, are we here? Are we on? Can you guys hear us? Okay. Man, I sure hope we can still be on there. I don't know. Now that we're talking about our children, or I was talking about our children, I don't even know. Does it look like there's evidence of anybody on?
This is 15, but nothing's moving. Nothing.
I know. Did we lose them, I wonder? Can somebody give us feedback to tell us if it's working? Wow, 12. Bummer. Uh-oh. Unlisted video. Oh, don't tell me. Let me see if I can get on here. Okay. Hello, Paul from Argentina. Okay, so, oh, wait. 20 people. Okay. Shoot. Christian's here. Great. I think you're getting the chat delayed. I answered and it takes a minute before you respond. Okay, thank you for the edge. You're good. All good. Yes, let's pray about the storms that are going through the Midwest tonight. Oh, what's going on? I don't even know, you guys. I'm not listening. I think you're getting the chat delayed. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Love edging to you. Let's see, 20 people. Beth Ann Shad. Context, very small urban backyard. Question, Paul. If fruit trees are acquired in a few years, how to train them to be columnar and dwarf?
Well, dwarf has everything to do with the rootstock. You have to have the right rootstock. And then just
Semi-dwarf or dwarf?
There's both semi-dwarf or dwarf. Dwarf are smaller, semi-dwarf are larger.
What do you recommend?
I like semi-dwarf. They're manageable. And then just you prune the trees to develop, to where they come up and out of themselves, and then you can reach everything. Once it gets tall enough where you can't reach it, then cut to a lateral branch that becomes your leader, and maintain whatever height you want.
Okay, Charles Coker says, I hope that answered your question. Beth Ann Shad, if not, come back and let us know. Was watching a gardener in South Mississippi. He said they put electroculture antenna on one plant. It grew more than the ones that had only one. Ouch. Oh, good. Cool. Monica Melgario, I think how you say that. Hello, Paul from Argentina. Welcome to the live chat. Okay. Working on my end. Okay. So hopefully this is going to continue to work. Let us know if it doesn't, please. Oh, she's barking. Okay. Not working at all here. It's weird. Gonna connect it to my iPhone and see what happens. Oh, you can hear us, but the chat's not working? That's weird. Oh my goodness. Why is that not working? Boy, I tell you, there's interception. And I'm wondering, you guys, let's see. What can I do with birds? Oh, good question. He'll tell you what to do.
Well, I had problem with ravens, and I killed one and hung it up in a very visible place, and it really worked well. It never came back.
Oh, man. Is there any, you're reading?
Yeah. Yeah, just like I say, just how I determine the height of the tree. When it gets to where I can't reach anymore, I cut to a lateral branch going out, and that becomes a leader. And I let nothing develop above it, so I can maintain it in a space I can reach.
Okay, let's see. More working on my end. Okay, did you see? She's petite and that 5'2", and we don't want to let any trees get too tall to drop fruit in neighbor's yard. You ever read that?
Mhm.
Thanks, Paul. Try. Let's see. Follow-up question. Could I train a tree from seed to be a columnar and dwarf? Seeds are tricky.
Seeds are going to be won't
Different
be
birds.
the same as the original tree because it was cross pollinated.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a whole new variety. It won't be the same apple.
And you might not like it or same fruit.
Yeah.
Let's see. Can you prune a pear tree like you prune the apple trees?
Yes. Now pears tend to have more of a tendency to go upright, so you have to really work at it. But all my pears look like apples. They don't look any different.
Okay, Karen says that, Paul, this is my second year to get those horrible stinkhorn on my wood chips. Is this going to go on every year? I don't even know what that is.
I don't know.
What's a stinkhorn? Does anybody tell us? Oh, mushrooms, ugly and stinky. So you can't even eat them?
Yeah, just bring them to the surface and let them dry out. Just
But aren't they good for the mycelium?
well, they're part of the whole natural order in soil
Right.
breakdown. So
So I don't know if
they're
I'd
actually
be,
beneficial.
I don't know if I'd cuss at them, right?
So just bring them to the surface and let them dry out. You uproot them
Whatever.
so they're not growing.
I don't know. Let's see. It's egg. Its egg is edible. What's egg? A stinkhorn egg?
Mhm.
What do you mean, Mr. East of Eden? It's a mutualist organism. Mutualist organism. What's a mutual? Would you please talk English? What's a mutualist organism? I'm not sure what that is. Yes'm. Mutualist organism. Okay, I guess I can understand that to some degree, but maybe define for those of us that are not as mutualist organized in our brain. Stinkhorn is Pumpkin? Pumpkin? Stinkhorn is, I don't know what that means. I tried to log on and I can't really text. Oh, okay. From my phone. Okay, are you gonna come on? Because you went bye-bye. I don't see you anymore. Can you come on with us? Because I gave you the address. You should be able to get on. Okay, don't text from your phone then. I'll try it this way. Some mushrooms are mutualists and some mushrooms are symbiotes. It's a slightly different relationship that they share with a life around them. He has fat fingers and can't text. J Buck.
This is moving now.
You got to let me on. Did you ask to come on? Yeah, honey, you gotta move it. So did you ask to come on, Creedmoor? Because I mean, I don't know what to do. Okay, try again because tell me if something comes up because I'm not watching it the whole time that you are. So it should.
I'm watching.
Okay. It's weird because, oh wait, here we go. Here we go. Add. Mr. Creedmoor, I'm trying to add you. Dang, did it work? Oh, good. There you
Oh,
go. Oh, look at you out in the woods. You got
I
the
am. I'm in the
lighting
bush.
going. You got the lighting on, going on, and everything, man.
Yeah,
You're so
we
cute.
gotta get the full effect.
And look at your fancy hat, man. You
Well,
just
it's
in the
raining,
bush, brother.
so I figured if I'm going to do a live session in the rain, I may as well have a rain hat.
Yes, absolutely. Good job.
And I think I can do better too. I think I can put an earbud in, make it a little easier to hear me, because we are kind of in a flight path.
Well, we can hear you okay right now, fortunately. Hopefully this will
There we
last.
go. How's that?
Thank you. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing, folks. We appreciate it when you do that.
I'll get
Oops,
mine
I
afterwards.
don't
Now that I'm
erase
in the
mine.
chat room, I can't do it. But hello everyone. Hi Paul.
Hi.
Welcome from the East Coast.
Yeah, no
I
kidding. Look
saw
at the
already
dark.
a lot of great questions. I know about the stinkhorn mushroom because I do a lot of mycology work, and the stinkhorn. I have to stop short of calling it a symbiote. And a symbiote is an organism that does something good for itself as well as something good for something else, and they work together for a common good. Mutualist, on the other hand, is a slightly different organism. It really wants everything for itself, but it's willing to share a tiny bit with those things around it so that those things around it can thrive enough to help it live. I hope that makes sense. That's the
Yeah.
simplest way that I can explain it. And the stinkhorn is in the southeast United States. We really call it a penis flytrap because it's shaped like a penis. I can say that, right? There's no kids. I think Carol told me this wasn't set up for children. So it grows from the ground, shaped like a penis, completely with the veil, a head, and everything on top. And if that's not vulgar enough for you, it also kind of oozes almost like a very pungent sap out of the top of it. And that sap is an attractant to the flies. And it attracts the flies, and then the flies step in the sap and they carry its spores to other locations. So it's a prolific uh, mutualist in wood chips. It really enjoys wood chips. It favors high carbon soils. It favors lignin. It favors the plants that grow well in wood chips. We found stinkhorn attached to the roots of our sweet potatoes, and
Ooh,
those sweet potatoes were some of the finest, sweetest sweet potatoes that we've had.
All right.
So
what?
it did, yes, absolutely. It did great things. The stinkhorn mushroom, the mycology that's below the soil are little tiny eggs, and the eggs are attached by a hypha, like a little strand. If it wasn't raining, I could go get some and show it to you. That's
Oh,
how
you got him.
common it
Wow.
is here. Like I know where it is. You know your garden when you're turning your soils, you're moving your soils, you're building on top of them. You know where these things pop up, and
Uh-huh.
I'm definitely intimate enough with my soils to know where the stinkhorn is. So I want to answer that gal right now. She said, "Is it something that I'm going to have year after year?" And I know where it is because I have it year after year. Okay,
So
so
you're saying it's good for the soil if we can put up with it? And then
well,
how can you get
let me let you be the judge because there's another side to that. Okay, it automatically attained resistance to the wireworms. So wireworms are fairly prevalent in our soils, and they made absolutely zero impact on the sweet potatoes that were being managed alongside of the stinkhorn mushroom. Okay, so increased insect resistance, increased sugar content. They were sweeter. They required less water to get them to grow to fruition. Here's the downside: everywhere we didn't have them attached to the roots of our sweet potatoes, the sweet potatoes grew larger.
Mm.
But the sweet potatoes had other inclusions. They weren't always perfect. They weren't really smooth and beautiful. They weren't grocery store grade. Y'all know that if it's not perfect in every single way, when you take it to the grocer to sell it, they want to turn it away. There's nothing wrong with it. And in all honesty, this is why I say you be the judge, because I prefer the larger ones. I prefer them to have some insects with my food. That's just
Mhm.
me. And I've kind of grown accustomed to having the wireworm, in the soil, and it's sort of like a faithful soil companion. However, once you get this fly trap in your garden, it will spread as long as there's cover, as long as there's a woody cover on top, as long as it likes the environment, and as long as you have flies. Because as the insects visit it, the insects are going to drop the spores wherever they land. If they land on another piece of wood chip beside it, or if they land somewhere in the grass, Same scenario happens. It's a really, really prolific breeder. It'll make more of itself very quickly. You scrape the wood chips across the top and just remove the top layer. You'll find these very small, maybe you can see my fingers, maybe quarter-inch to half-inch round. They almost look like little tiny white eggs, but they're attached to each other with a strand, another white strand of hyphae. Well, they actually grow into rather large balls that are the size of a chicken's egg. And truth be known, I'd be lying if I said that they're not edible, because they very much are edible. There are cultures where this particular fungal egg is a delicacy. It's not my culture. It's probably not your culture, but there are cultures that actually choose to eat these things for their nutrition. So yes, they're highly nutritional. We don't.
Well, she's
No one is eating the part above ground, and I wouldn't suggest anyone eat them. Like we should go on record as saying, don't eat them because they're nasty, and that should be enough.
she
But you're
definitely
not
agrees with the
likely to die.
nasty don't eat them part. She
Yeah,
just
you
said her
probably
smell
won't
grossed her
die.
out so bad she couldn't do it.
Yeah, they smell horrible. I mean, if you can imagine the smell of rotting flesh and then multiply
Oh,
that times about 50, that's
oh,
about what the smell is. That's how bad it is. That's how we know they're around. And once
ew.
I sense they're around, if I pick up on them with the nose, I'll look around, I'll search for them, and I'll take the fruited body out and I'll put it in a plastic bag and dispose of it. It smells that bad.
Wow.
It's horrific. I mean, like, so you see, I'm saying, is it a fertility aid? Yes. Can it help a sweet potato grow better? It can do that too. Does it help the sweet potato taste sweeter? Yeah, but there's lots of other ways to make sweet potatoes sweet without having to mess with that stinkhorn.
How funny.
So, I mean, hopefully that answers the question. Yes, it is going to favor the wood chips. It's going to stay until it's removed. We
But
don't
it's
apply
good. What you're
fungicide.
saying though is it's just good for the
Ultimately,
wood
it's
chips.
good.
It's just nasty
Yeah.
smelling.
On the whole, we want it to stay saprophytic. We want it to just eat the detritus. We want it to eat the waste and leave the plants alone. But this is a fungi that will help your plant grow. So I have only had it growing together with sweet potatoes. There's a chance that it may favor sweet potatoes. It may favor southern soils. It may favor high moisture content. It could favor several of those features. And they do seem to be prevalent in my gardens. You know, I've said it before, we have a deep, deep, deep bed of mulch. So there's always plenty of wood chips for these fungi to chew on, and we encourage it. I would encourage all of y'all out there to let it grow if you can, because we really do. I mean, tonight we were kind of thinking about talking about weeds anyway, and
Yeah, kind of
this is
weedy.
kind of a strange sort of like a little segue into that, because when we raise the fungal content of the soil that we grow our food in, the soil becomes more like forest soils, and forest soils don't grow a lot of weeds. And one of the reasons they don't grow a lot of weeds is because they have a lot of these peculiar relationships with the fungi in the soils. Instead of there just being one fungi in the soils in the forest, imagine there's thousands and thousands of different types. And each one of these fungi has a different function, performs a different task for the soil, for the whole entire soil food web, for the whole entire ecology of things, as a matter of fact. And what a lot of new back to Eden growers, maybe in the beginning, they don't quite interpret correctly is there's this broader assumption that if we're talking about mushrooms, we're talking about something that has the fruited body that pops up. But when we're talking about fertility and we're talking about weed management and we're talking about progressive strategies to reduce the amount of weed content in your garden, we're talking about the fungi that you really can't even see. The stuff that attaches itself to the roots of your plants, the stuff that lives below the surface, that integrates itself with the nutrient chain in the soil. Those are the same fungal symbiotes that want to break down all of that carbon matter, and they want to turn it into something that your plants can consume. And they do a really, really, really good job of it. And they do a better job of it when we can't look at our garden and say, hey, there's only stinkhorn. You know, I'm pointing towards my garden. Hey, there's only stinkhorn. There can't just be stinkhorn. There needs to be as many local versions of fungi, as many that fruit, that dance, that don't dance, that make music. Because yes, fungi makes music. there needs to be a great diversity of that stuff in your garden. And when there's a tremendous diversity of that stuff, the weeds stop growing because the chemistry in the soil changes, the energy in the soil changes, and the direction of the garden changes. By the time the grower gets enough fungi put into the soils, either by rotating around the sun or by putting it in there manually, they really have challenged so much. They've championed so much in their garden. Several years may have passed. You start to develop a really personal relationship with the garden and the plants that you grow. And that's when we start to feel like, hey, I don't want to let my garden down by letting more weeds grow. So I have to keep a convention that keeps me within range of having a non-competitive environment for my preferred plants to grow. So, you know, the whole entire Back to Eden method, right from its inception, sets a grower up to leverage these forces very well. I mean, I can't begin to thank the process enough because of how effective it was at streamlining my weed process. Buddy Anderson here because he's probably chuckling because I just said my weed process. He's got a dirty mind. Okay, okay. So anyway,
So
if anyone is still paying attention, um, fungus likes
I'm
wood,
paying
folks.
attention.
Fungi likes wood, okay? And bacteria will tolerate dirt. But fungi won't tolerate dirt with no carbon matter. It won't. And that's something that folks should know is Father gave us fungi to manage our forests and to manage our pastures, to manage our places that we love to be. He gave it to us as a tool to connect to the earth. And that tool affords us the ability to connect to the earth in a better way. Because when we propagate lots of it and increase its diversity, it works for us instead of against us. It works to say, hey, I've decided I only select these species. These are the ones that I symbiote with. So these are the ones that I want to care for. And what ends up happening is all of this fungi starts to pay attention to the roots of your plants, your favorite plants. And those plants make asks. They ask for something. They ask for nutrition. They ask for energy. They ask for electricity. They ask for all of these things by dropping sugars into the soil that you made, the soil that all of you growers made when you put the compost down, and then you put the wood chips on top. Now we've got these cultures blowing around the wind all over the globe. The ones that are local and indigenous to us land on top of our gardens. And after that wood chip resistance goes away, all the tannic acids drip out of the garden, the fungi starts to take root. The spores and the conidia start to grow and they start to develop. It takes time. It's not fast. It's not a fast process. You know, Mother Nature didn't build this beautiful green earth in 10 minutes. It took time. Evolution had to set in. Someone else had to put a thinking cap on and say, hey, this is how things need to work. And as intricate as they are, they really aren't that intricate because all around us is everything that we need to assure ourselves of fertility. All around us are the articles that we need to actually beat the war against weeds. All right. When I first started out with just wood chips, I saw all of these local forms of fungi. I went out, I kicked the grasses over, I lifted the leaves, I sifted through some of the leaf matter at the edge of the fields and the edge of the woods, and I found the stuff. And I simply added it to my wood chips. And then now it resides in my wood chips, but it's in mass. And it's a funny thing. It's like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that little store called 7-Eleven. They sell coffee all night long. They sell gasoline. They sell buttered rolls. Well, let me tell you about the 7-Eleven phenomenon. You drive by there at 11 o'clock at night. If there's not a single car in the parking lot, nobody pulls in for a cup of coffee. But if there's one or two cars, 3 or 4 cars will stop. This is a phenomenon, mind you. Okay? It's a phenomenon. And basically, what happens is once someone realizes, hey, there's someone in this place, they start thinking, I bet they got hot coffee. And they show up. This is under that old adage about if you build it, they will come. Well, the same thing happens in your garden. If you build it, they will come. If you lay the wood chips down, you provided the carbon base for the fungi to show up. if you spin around and you rotate around that big yellow orb in the sky a few times, 3, maybe 4 times, the fungi will grow naturally. But if you're in a hurry, or you're growing where there's lots of weeds, or you were trying to stifle weeds like I was, I went out and I found some local fungi and I put it in the wood chips and it grew. I mean, this is akin to me just going out and saying, I have some seeds, I'll go out and I'll plant them. It's no different. It's no different than me planting a tomato plant in the garden. And be perfectly honest with y'all, I don't even plant tomato plants anymore. I'm in this 13 years. I learned from the master sitting next to me. This guy right here. Y'all see me poking him? Yeah. I learned from him. And then things just exploded around me. The fertility bloomed. My plants grew so strong that they grew until they got old and then they died of old age. For reals. They drop seeds onto the ground and I don't clean them up. The next year, they pop up again. I'm not managing disease. I'm not fighting insects. I'm not doing any of those things that other growers are struggling to get a hold of because I followed the basic principles that Mr. Paul Gauchi put forward so many years ago. And I had the faith and the belief and the knowledge that if I just stuck to the principles, eventually I would get to a place where there's no weeds. Now, let me tell you this, folks, because I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to admit it. I didn't know that it was okay to have a few weeds. I thought the goal was to have no weeds. So really, when like I'm telling you this now, Paul, when I was looking at your garden, I thought, wow, this guy's great. His garden has always got no weeds.
It's not true.
I know that now, okay, but I didn't. You know what I mean? When something's put together in like a marketing style, you don't know
It
that. I
just
didn't
doesn't have as
know.
many weeds.
I did not know. I
It
had no
could though
perspective.
if there's not enough wood chips.
All I knew was that his garden looked wonderful. It looked grand, and every time I looked at it, it always looked beautiful. So I'm like, I got this is like really. I'm like, I gotta really keep up. I gotta whatever it takes. I gotta get like what he's doing. And
You're
it was
beyond
like
it.
a vigil. It was like I just couldn't. There was no way to rest until I achieved what I saw Paul had achieved. And I had no idea that I was looking at what he was doing through a broken lens. I didn't know. And I don't think that everyone else understands that all the time either. But luckily, some of the growers that we're talking to right now have actually been to your place. So they have a better feel, even better feel than my field. Because, like I said, I thought it was always like that. I thought, like, really, I don't know. I mean, I laugh now, but the reality is that I went after this target that wasn't inachievable. Paul didn't set the bar too high. He didn't even set my imaginary bar too high. He set it right where it needed to be. And then I busted my tail until I achieved it. And I mean, I'm going to tell everybody right now what it took to achieve. So it's going to be recorded right here for life, forever, for everyone to hear and rewind it 1,000 times. I put too many chips on the ground. It killed all the grass. The chips broke down into wonderful soil. I saw weeds. I got scared because Paul didn't have weeds, so I put more chips on top. Once I got more chips on top, the weeds stopped growing. But this is what happened next that seems to me to be unbelievable. All along for the first 2 or 3 years, I had no support system. It was just that movie. Fat Nub hadn't even made that many videos. And all I knew was just put more wood chips on top. But by the 4th year, I had 6 or 7 inches of rich soil beneath those coarse wood chips. And there were no weeds. And every plant I put in the ground grew to be an old plant. No lie. That was when I finally found the groups on Facebook. And I was still dealing with insects, but the vigor and the fertility they were really, I mean, it was, everything was improving all the way around. Okay. I was on the map. By year 4, I was on the map. Every insect in the whole entire county, no, for 3 counties, knew I had a BTE garden over here. Mm-hmm. Every insect all around me knew that I had sweet plants growing, and they came. They came long and they came hard, and they tried to live here. and they did a great job year 4 through 6. And then in year 7, you know what happened, folks? Please, folks, listen, because I'm telling you the God's honest truth. The predator showed up. By year 7, every bad bug that likes to eat the even worse bugs was showing up. I didn't know their names. I do now, but they were showing up to meal. They were showing up to eat because I'd inadvertently created a great place to grow weak plants. That attracted the insects. The insects stayed for a couple of years while I tried to figure out what to do. And Heavenly Father sent me assassin bugs, and he sent me ladybugs, and he sent me lizards and skanks, and he sent me the robins came later. Like Mr. Anderson will tell you, I've been crying about robins for the past 10 years. They showed up in year 12. I paid attention every single year because I learned from that guy right there. If we look and we listen and we feel what's going on around us, nature is talking to us. And if we pay attention deeply enough, we'll figure out what he's saying, what she's saying. We'll figure it out. We figure out what the birds and the bees and the insects and everything. Oh, did I mention the bees? They came back too. You see, but by year 7, they decided to stay. The predators stayed. The hawks stayed. The snakes stayed. The mink, they stayed. The cats showed up in year 12 and 13. They stayed. Everything stayed. The balance is coming because I asked for the balance to show up. When I put the gardens in place and I continued to garden. And so for those of you that know, I know that Carol knows and Paul is aware, Creedmoor Fury doesn't garden just for the summer. Okay? I garden summer, fall, winter, spring. That's pretty much the order. All 4 seasons. So when people ask me how it is that I got the energy packed into that garden over there so quickly, I got the energy packed into the garden by growing all 4 seasons of every year, by not stopping. And I can because of my climate, because it's mild enough to do so. But in a climate where it's mild enough to grow for all 4 seasons, you bet your last dollar, I've got more bugs than anyone can shake a stick at. You name the bug, it's here. Along with bugs, you know what else likes to grow in favorable weather? Lots of weeds. So, I laugh about it now. I can laugh about it now because in the beginning, if had I realized what a mountain I was trying to climb, I would have thought, this is not realistic. I should just learn to tolerate a few of the weeds, let them come in. Instead, what I did was I encouraged the plants that I like to grow to drop seeds where I like to grow them. And all of my plants are rotated one time every single day. My plants are rotated 365 days a year, some years. And that's it. The seeds fall to the ground, the sugars dump into the soils, the roots stay associated. The fungus has something to be attached to if we keep a living root. So it could be said part of keeping weeds out is also keeping a living root in the gardens. I understand also, folks. So a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, this is crazy. This guy's saying this. Everybody can't be in their garden all the time. Everybody can't just go out to the garden and rescue the garden all the time. Everybody can't pull weeds all the time. I don't pull weeds all the time. That's just it. Because that want to pressure my gardens. It's all still there. It never turned waiting for me to it to the gardens. But the truth is that my plan, my holistic, my permaculture plan, doesn't really afford them the opportunity to do this. Again, back in the beginning, when I didn't really understand the process, I knew that Paul had finer chips in his garden than he did in his orchard. Today, I have those same fine chips, but they're underneath this much coarse chips. It's very, very fine. If I scrape the top layer of chips off, weeds, anything will grow in that layer. It's just that layer is 10, 12, and 16 inches deep in some areas. But just above that layer, I keep a layer of coarse, ugly, nasty, angry looking wood chips on top. And this time of the year, there's not enough of it. There's
Hey,
actually a few
Creedmoor.
little, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I-
You guys are rolling pretty good. There's no interruptions or anything in the feed, you guys, because I'm gonna go away for a little bit, and so
You
I'm
are? Okay.
yeah, but I'll be back. I'm gonna go away for just a little bit,
Well,
and
I'm just going to chat for another couple of minutes and then let, you know, everyone else out there have a say. And, Paul can also add an enormous amount of wisdom as much as he'd like.
hey
And then we'll go
Philip.
from there if you
Sure.
like.
No, I'm not telling you to be quiet. I'm just trying to find out, make sure that everything is coming like it's supposed to be.
I'm
Um,
hearing everything clearly. Is everyone out there? Yeah, sounds good. My mom
yeah,
named me
just
after the Garden of Eden. That's really nice. Hi,
yeah.
Eden. That's
All
kind
right.
of
Well,
sweet.
I'll be back, but you guys take care of my husband.
Well, we're in good hands. So anyway, as I was saying, is my understanding, at least the way I perceived what I was learning from the movie, was that as long as I kept a couple of inches of coarse cover over the top of that really fertile soils beneath, that I would have an easier time managing the weeds. And I can say on the whole, that's been true. In the beginning, for the first few years, while I was still battling the Bermuda grass, and so it was finally put back, was up posture all the way around the garden. Over the defensive posture has changed. I've gone from edging to no edging to an extra 2 feet of wood chips to the rubber interlocking athletic mats that I use now, and that's been the most instrumental force in keeping the weeds back. If I only had grasses like rye or fescue, it wouldn't be nearly as difficult. For those of you that are growing in Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, North Carolina, South Carolina, parts of Virginia, for those of you that have that Bermuda grass, it tends to want to grow underneath and through everything. So we want to block it. We want to block that light, take away its ability to photosynthesize. We want to make its conditions tougher than it is. And the truth is that stuff can root down into hard pan clay 6 feet, very easily down 6 feet. But once we cut it off, once we cut its lifeblood off, once we make it so that it has to struggle to get what it wants, once we start raising the fungal counts in soils, that's when we start to see the conditions for the weed growth, the conditions for the thistle change. And one of the largest complaints that I see everywhere is that people have thistle growing in the garden and they've cut it off and it keeps coming back. Um, it's very difficult for me to get a grasp on exactly what they're seeing because I know once those things go to seed, they drop millions of seeds. And once they go to rhizoming and once they start pushing stolon growth underneath the ground, they will go until an act of Congress or an act of the man upstairs or the act of the gardener tears it all out. And I think if I recall one of your stories, you suggested that you put down your cover and then the following year and season the soils had softened. You too were able to remove a lot of the stuff. And I have to say I concur with that because every time I build these gardens again, I want to take the simplest approach. We've gone from putting down cardboard to putting down paper to putting down no cardboard to putting down no paper to just flat out laying a deep layer of mulch. And then you get a little bit of grow back. The weeds will push against you for a little bit of time until you finally get the roots out of the ground and until you get enough carbon cover over the top that no longer has the seed content. As long as it doesn't have that seed content, you're going to be able to keep it out. So a proper defense is levied by a proper offense. Another thing I've often had to state in group is that some people, they feel like grasses are good and you can run that mower around your garden, you can push the grasses out of the exhaust right into the garden. Well, when those grasses have seeds and you don't have a thick layer of coarse cover, those seeds are going to germinate. They most certainly will. And this is where the saddle hoe comes in. This is where my little short tined rake comes in. because you really can manage grasses pretty easily, especially those types of grasses. You can take that little saddle hoe and you can wiggle it back and forth across the top of those grasses. They'll uproot the grasses, and the grasses will dry out on top of the wood chips. But if you're doing this more than a few times a week, you got to know, you got to realize you got fertility towards the sky, and that's why the weeds are showing up. And if that's the case, we've got to put some kind of cover on top of it. We either need more carbon cover, more wood chips, or we need a living cover of your choice. And I actually prepared a a section of my garden to sort of detail these things. If we had the time, if anyone was interested, I can even show what all this stuff looks like. Leaves. We've talked about leaves. In the fall, they fall off of the trees. They lay 1, 2, 3 inches thick at the base of the tree. They can be collected. Those leaves can be used to block weed growth. That's method number one. If you don't have wood chips, you can use leaves. It's really, really easy, folks. This is what I mean by the Heavenly Father and Mother Nature is providing all of this material for us. If we have something that produces leaf, then we have material that we can use as weed blocking. So I can go on record saying that I believe that the leaf blocks weeds better when it's on top of the soil than it does when it's used below the soil. Because when it's below the compost or it's below the wood chips, it tends to block the gas exchange, and that makes growing plants difficult. So if your goal is to grow plants the same season as you build a garden, you really don't want to cut off the oxygen or the carbon dioxide supply to your plants or their roots. That's just not a great idea. So, you know, that's why I always say, hey, if you already have a garden and you want to kind of cut off some of the weeds that are growing on top, and you don't have the wood chips to lay on top, but you do have access to some leaves, by all means, don't let the leaves go to waste. If you're not making leaf mulch or leaf compost with them, you can use them as cover. There's no reason why to not do that. You know, you'll find things get a whole lot easier if you have an ally in the soils to prevent the germination of the various seeds. And they're going to fall too. They're going to blow in. They do. I mean, by myself. I'm covering 8,000 square feet of gardens, all 4 seasons. So if I don't have an efficient system to manage the weeds, it's a failure. It ends up really being a critical failure, and it's all on that convention of applying compost in the fall when the weed pressure is light, and then applying coarse wood chips in the spring after all of my plants have come up. The weeds want to grow too. This is my convention. I'm sure there are other conventions that work as well. I just want to present to all of the viewers what I'm doing that I know works. And what I'm doing that I know works is in the springtime, these weeds want to pop up all over the place because the seeds are blowing from the grasses, from the pastures. And if they're going to blow from the pastures and you put compost down in the fall and it lands on your compost, they're going to germinate. It's that simple. Just like my tomato plants drop a tomato the fall before, and then it gives me a plant the next spring. So those things are going to germinate. So I learned that when I put wood chips down in the fall on top of my compost, I had far fewer tomatoes germinating in the spring. Well, I want my tomatoes to germinate in the spring. So now I let them germinate. I let them volunteer themselves because they come up stronger than they were the last time. And then once they're about 12 inches tall, I can put in a layer of wood chips, and I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm going to be out there using my little saddle hoe or my little mini rake, because I'm not going to. I mean, really. So you're wondering, I can see the gears out there right now. You're wondering what kind of wood chips. Really, I'm going to use the youngest chips that I have in the spring. Because if I use a year-old chip, that's the same wood chip that I'm growing potatoes in. If it's not going to keep the potato from growing, it's not going to keep the weed from growing. So I try to use the chips that came to me most recently as my spring top cover. And I know a lot of people probably saying, well, I don't want, the coarse wood chips. I get it. They don't look as good as that nice fluffy soil. I admit it, but I don't have the luxury of leaving that soil exposed. And maybe it's not a luxury, but for me, it would be a luxury because this place is like a canvas and it's pure. And anywhere something wants to fall, it's going to grow. The wood chips are so broken down, they are the richest compost that you can't even buy. And now I'm at a point, here I am going into year 14. I have to protect that. And I'm really certain, I'm really, really certain that putting a couple of inches of wood chips down in the spring protects the investment that I made. The fresher wood chips, they definitely block weeds a whole lot better than a wood chip that's been sitting around for a year or two. And it really, I mean, I could just rake down a 2-year-old pile and just plant in it. That here anyway, all you need is moisture and a seed, and those 2-year-old wood chips and anything will grow in it. We already rather routinely grow our sweet potatoes in chips that are 6 months old. So I mean, it's testimony. I'm giving testimony to the fact that plants do grow in wood chips, and roots grow in them, and trees grow in them, and all of this sort of stuff grows in them because it's the embodiment of what they are, and life begets life. So I don't know. I've been yapping long enough. Y'all probably have a lot of questions. Maybe there's some stewing here. I don't know. But we can certainly look to it and see if anyone has chimed in. And I've got my glasses on today, folks, so I should be able to read. And incidentally, folks, I am in my garden. Just thought it would be kind of cool to be here. So I see J-Bot. And Paul, I'm not even sure how many of the questions you got to before I even got here.
We got pretty much all of them.
So it looks like there's anything new. Charles Coker's talking about making fertilizer from weeds. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Absolutely
There's a
love it.
question. I've got a black widow in my sugar snap peas leaves. Do I burn it? No, just remove it.
Yeah. Oh, and J-Bot's asking if he's blocked people.
Julia had a question about cedar rust.
Ooh, cedar apple rough. That's a good one. What was she wondering about?
I don't know. She said,
Oh,
"Should
there
I
it is.
worry?"
I don't.
I used to have it when I first came, but when my trees got well, it left.
Y'all see that? Cedar. Planted them as babies 5 years ago. Put wood chips at their feet. They're 12 feet tall and 12 feet around now. When they were in pots, they sat in pots for years because a landscaper from around town gave them to me, and I planned to plant them. We had cedar apple rust, little balls, on them when they were in pots. When I put them in the ground here, they were planted right to the red clay, and I put 8 inches of wood chips underneath them. As the trees have grown wider, I've put more wood chips so that the wood chips land directly underneath the widest portion of their weep line. There's no cedar apple rust to speak of. There's, well, nothing but thrive. So the answer to what do I do about things like cedar apple rust is fortify the soil, use the principles behind the back to Eden method, and the trees will grow fast and they will grow strong. They will develop a phenomenally strong immune system, and none of those things will impact them. Those a little flies, a little mites, they won't impact them at all. It's amazing. Aphids won't go near them. They won't touch them. They're just so strong now. So if you get a chance to, and if you're not already putting wood chips or some other form of organic cover over the earth at the base of the cedar trees, it's another tree that really wants a fungally diverse soil at its feet. And if you can do that, it's going to be beneficial. Julie Ramona, there she is. Julia, definitely don't worry about it so much. Worry more about how you're going to care for the tree. Its basic needs, its moisture needs, things like that. Cedars do really, really well in the diverse range of soils. So if you can get them happy, they're going to grow fast and strong. Ab Aranus is asking how long did it take? Okay, I can touch on that pretty quickly. I put the 8 inches down initially. I didn't. I actually, Paul, I've got to admit some other things here. I did go out and I bought a machine to make my own chips. It was like a $10,000 investment because I didn't know that I could get chips from anyone else. So the first wood chips that I made were really fine. They were super fine. The machine that I have, it'll chop up an 8 inch log. But when you just put in the branches through, like we like to use, branches with leaves, branches with needles, it cuts them up into such small pieces that I laid 8 inches of wood chips, 75 feet long. And after 2 months, it was 4 inches of wood chips. I panicked. So basically, what that means is it turns the soil so fast.
Yes.
It was so fast. We had a lot of rain that season, 13 or so years ago. A lot of rain. I think it might have been droughting on the West Coast, but it was really, really wet here. And the chips, they just broke down inside of 4 months. So what I ended up doing was making contact. My next door neighbor, unbeknownst to me at the time, was a tree care professional. He was the gentleman that got me catapulted into this deep mulch business, and he brought me my first few loads. So by the end of the 8th month, basically those 8 inches were reduced to nothing. That's how fast it went. I'd already put 4 more inches down, and I built the entire garden out to roughly 12 to 16 inches of chip depth. That was when we went right. It was like go big or go home. And remember, at that point, I still had no idea what I was doing. So I'm really admitting to all of this right now because I think it's appropriate. Other people might laugh and chuckle about it, but I didn't know any better, and there was no Facebook to just jump on and say, "Hey, have y'all heard of Paul Gauchi on the West Coast doing stuff in wood chips?" It wasn't there. So I just, went on about myself with, the presence of mind that I had, the experience that I had from being an arborist myself, told me that if I put the wood chips down, they're probably going to break down. And we did not have enough cardboard to cover 3,000 feet of garden, folks. I didn't. I cheated. I did. I used really deep chips. I'm not ashamed of it. It worked really well, man. It really did. It was like the bomb. I mean, uh, ab, ab. By the third year, there was enough soil buildup to grow any plant. I was still mixed up, but the garden was capable. That's the best way to put it. I was still 1 foot in the old door and 1 foot in the new door. I was still kind of halfway practicing organic growing by going to the store and buying bags of fertilizer. This is come clean day, Paul. May as well do it now. I was still using those fertilizers. While they weren't salt-based fertilizers, they were OMRI listed. They were organic, but it was still, I was utilizing resources that weren't coming from my home, from my farm, from my hens. They wasn't coming from here, and it really wasn't the right stuff to use. It gave me a boost. It gave me a head start. But later on, I realized it was all just wasting money. I don't know what to say. Again, I mean, you just don't know. And honestly, if I had your phone number back then, I could have cut off a lot of years. Humble beginnings, though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't really in a hurry back then. I was like, just pile it on and let's see what happens. And that's when I realized later that's pretty much what a lot of people do. I hear about people talking about lasagna growing, and they went out and they raided the hen house for manure. They raided their neighbors' pine trees for pine needles and pine cones. They raided the compost pile, and they got like 12 layers down. They don't have any wood chips, but they got 12 layers of stuff, and they're ready to roll. And bless all of them, because that is a way to get going. And had I not gone my direction, I would have gone that direction. And even today, I think, wow, why didn't I learn about cover cropping back then? Wow, why didn't I learn that I could use a living edge to keep the weeds from coming in? All these things, they hit you later on after you have a little bit of foresight, after you've had a few successes. I had no idea what a living edge was. I didn't know that I could grow plants densely right on the outside edge of the garden, and then nothing from the other side of the garden would grow in. And then utilize essentially utilize the plants that prefer to grow in that environment already. So we're talking about indigenous plant species. And I use them at the borders, maybe with some alliums or onions or garlic or something like that. We relatively exclusive to weeds, and weeds don't want to have much to do with those areas. And if you can create that sort of wall, as we were able to do essentially all the way around all of our gardens, if you were to walk with me during the daylight, you could find an example of this sort of barrier around all of the gardens. And it appears in different forms, but it's a practice and it's a principle that we adhere to. Because if you don't have it, like if I recall correctly, you have railroad ties that are
Uh-huh.
close to flush. Super effective, yes?
Yeah.
I mean, don't they last for many years? And
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they don't break down.
yeah, I mean, and they work. And from my point, I'm like, I would rather hit that with, my lawnmower as an edge or my edging tool as an edge than use a weed whacker to put all of the grasses and weeds into the garden. I would rather, you know, utilize some form of consolidation if I have
But
weeds that are
you
right
know
up
what works
against that.
better and a lot cheaper, and is much more you can make is concrete, and you can make nice edges and bends, and
Yes,
concrete's cheap, and it
it
lasts
is.
forever, and
It
makes a great
is.
barrier, 4 inches.
I thought about that. You could utilize, probably rent a curbing machine and just build a 10 or a 12-inch curb the whole way around,
Yeah,
and curves
and
and
it's
shapes, natural
clean,
shapes,
it's
and permanent. Well,
non
it's
toxic.
close. Um, that's like the dream garden. My dream come true with the barrier that nothing can get over.
Yeah.
There's Anderson. He's picking fresh asparagus. That's good news. Paul, this is the gentleman that planted 500 asparagus plants with a drill.
Oh wow.
It was so cool. It was like a little soil drill, I guess about that
Hmm.
big, and he just and just went around one after another after another. He got hundreds of asparagus to go that way.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
ask for an easier way to plant something, and he figured it out. He's the guy who believes go big or go home. So Julia's got 36 trees in her orchard, Paul, and those apples are all covered in rust this year. That's where those questions are coming from, and they're heavily mulched. All right, okay. The rust, the fungus infection, the rust is a little bit of a different breed. Um, Once it's got on the apples, it will defoliate those apples pretty quickly. That's common in the southeast as well. It really is. I have a pyracantha in my orchard, or where I have some other fruit and nut trees, and that pyracantha gets rust every 7 years. If you would believe it, every 7 years that daggone pyracantha, that fire bush, firethorn gets rust. And sometimes I grow beans, legumes are especially susceptible to that same exact rust near there. And I've become accustomed to know that the year after the rust, I can ramp up my legume planting because the rust doesn't impact the legumes the following year. The rust doesn't impact the apples that I have growing the following year. But I will say this, Lester, it was really hard to not cut that fire bush down. It was really like I did all I could to not. I mean, I love them all those bushes, the hawthorns, I love them, but I didn't because I knew that I could put wood chips at its feet and I could get 7 more years without rust.
Here, Abram has a question. Abram, I think it's okay to get your the plants at Home Depot. I think they'll be okay, so I wouldn't worry about it. I'm good.
Jason said so. Oh yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, I want to say again that one of the things that is super instrumental in managing those fungal infections on our trees is diversity of soil microbiology. And there are specific bacteria in the soil that work against converting the pathology that's being produced, sickness that's being produced. There are bacteria that counter that. So now I'm going to hit on the principle behind eliminating it. The principle behind eliminating it is consolidation of this microbiology in the most diverse way that you can. And the most diverse way that I know of to consolidate the biology that works against the rust fungus is by making compost. Might not be what people want to hear because at the time I mention that compost word, it's like a bad word. I'm not turning piles of compost. Should look at it a different way. When you're making compost, you're attracting soil biology. It's the same type of soil biology that cycles the nutrients to the plants that you want to grow. So if your plants are being eaten by insects, it's because they're weak, because they don't have this biology, they don't have this life at their feet. But when we make compost, we're actually magnet all types of life that then go on to balance the decomposing organisms. Because when we're talking about fungi and bacteria, those are the guys that are involved in breaking the wood chips down into soil, folks. Those are the guys that are involved in breaking down your tomatoes, the leaves of your pepper plants, the leaves, anything that you pile in there, that organic grass, everything that you put in that pile. The fungi and the bacteria are going to chew it up and take it into themselves, and predatory species are going to come along and chew them up. All this nutrients is going to be left in the soil where your plant's roots are. And the plants will then in turn absorb these nutrients and they'll utilize the soil biology to drive them into their physiology, into themselves, to take the embodiment of your compost and then utilize it as their own. When we do that, when we start to introduce the diversity, greater diversity, just imagine this. You got one fungal spore and it happens to be a rust spore, and there's nothing else around. The trees don't have any other beneficial organisms on them at all because they're brand new. Maybe they came from a bare root supplier, and it's not a whole lot of biology on them. A little bit maybe, but they were ripped out of the ground, so their root hairs are all torn off, and then they were stuck. So they've essentially been taken out of their equilibrium, and they're dizzy. And it could take a year, 2 or 3 years to get reacclimated. But when we start to pump this life back into their feet, to their roots, to their soils, to the wood chips that you put on top of the ground that are going to keep the soil softer, the dirt softer, that are going to bank more moisture, that are going to support more life. As long as we don't start pumping salt-based fertilizers on top of the ground, thinking, oh, it's a nutrient deficiency, it's a nutrient deficiency, the soil biology will excel to the task. They'll actually race to the job and do their jobs because they want to, because it benefits them to do the jobs. See, because the soil biology that I'm talking about now are actually symbiotes. These bacteria are going to enter the root hairs and feed the plants. If they're not there because you tilled your soils, you're going to have to wait for them or put them there yourself. And the best way to put them there is to make compost. The best way to get the bacteria that work against fungal diseases is to make compost. Use all of the waste from the plants that you grow in your gardens, from the trees that you grow in your orchards, from the leaves that you collect on your land, from all of your fallow lands, collect those things, and make compost. And I promise you, the soil biology will show up. And then when you use this compost at the base of the tree or the base of your plants, or if you spread it over the top of your garden in the fall, like I do, or if you put it in soil pockets, what you're doing is you're now giving the plant and the trees what it needs to get what it needs out of its life. You're giving it the tools, the soil functionality, the organisms and the micro-sized farmers that go out and do these tasks for the plants on their behalf. Because remember, the trees, the plants, they don't have legs. They can't go to Home Depot. They can't run down to the neighborhood pharmacy and get something because they have a hiccup. They can't. Instead, they make these little subtle statements to the environment around them. And when there's life around that's listening, it's the life that takes care of it. So I don't want to sit too hard on that soapbox. I'm a big believer in life begets life. Seen it, I see it. It works so well, and you can get control over essentially any disease, any pathogen. I'll give you an example because it's not enough for me to just say it can be done. Fusarium. And now I'm going to call something out by name. Fusarium is another one of those fungal infections. Okay, it impacts the plants and it kills them. It destroys their leaves. Yeah, it cuts off respiration, cuts off the nutrient supply. Why? Because it wants the sugars for itself, and because there's nothing in the environment to prevent it from doing it. It's essentially acting on its own recognizance. It's like a 6-year-old child that you set free in a candy store and said, "Go have a day of it, kid." They're just going to start tearing things apart. Well, there's a bacteria out there. There's several bacteria out there, and well, all of them are found in compost and other places. And when you put it on the soil, that bacteria multiplies by utilizing the same sugars that the fusarium wants. And then it creates these, well, enzymes that send signals to the fusarium to stop being a bad guy. And then it goes back to behaving. It switches. So for those of you who've heard me say that a lot of these microorganisms are multiphasal, this is what I mean. They have a different phase. They can phase into another preference. And there's a lot of thoughts that sometimes in the presence of these additional bacteria, what the bacteria do is they produce these chemistries that regulate, and they produce these chemistries that satisfy the need of those misbehaving organisms. Then what you end up with is those misbehaving organisms, they stay in your soil, they live in your soil, they're happy, they're satisfied, they're getting what they need, and they go back to simply being mutualists. In the case of these fungi, they go back to being saprophytic. They go back to just chewing on the carbon chain, and everybody's happy and everybody's merry. And we could look at that soil and I could say, yeah, I see some fusarium spores, but I don't see the fusarium misbehaving because I also see these 2,700 other types of bacteria that are helping create energy and give everything the sustenance it needs. So look to the life, folks. When you find something that's making the plant sick, look to the life that's supporting the plant. If there isn't a lot of life supporting the plant, that's a red flag. That's a dead giveaway that you're going to see more infections in your plants. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Abby said something. Abby White, yes, ma'am. I do grow all year. Um, I am hungry all year, therefore I grow all year. I mean, again, I'm sorry, folks. I took Paul so like literally back in the day. I'm glad that I did. He made me so confident. He made me feel like I could do anything. And I mean, who wouldn't want to celebrate that? Really, I'm proud to say that. Yes, I love to grow all year long because it was a challenge to get through my first fall and my first winter. And Mr. Anderson will tell you that we had a lot of failures. We really did. I had a lot of snow collapsing things. I tried to like block that out of my mind. It was traumatic. You're growing a plant through the spring and through the heat. It's 110 degrees here in the summer. Fall hits and all of a sudden it's 20 degrees and we get early snow. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? But we persevered. We learned. That's what we did. Learned by our mistakes. And I learned to create habitats, to microclimate. That was one of the things that made the largest impact for me, because that's what helped me to grow everything to the point where they were too old and then they just died. That's what really showed me the difference between a perennial plant and an annual plant. I didn't really know. I had no idea that peppers were perennial plants until I tried to grow them all winter long. And that was about 5 years ago, and they're still growing today. So there's benefits. So I don't want to just leave you stranded here on this, Abby White. The primary reason I went after all year growing and 4 season growing was because I started studying mycology somewhere around my 4th or my 5th year, and I realized that uh, mycology needs a living root. Take that, but I realized that the value of the wood chips were so great. Often grow temperate plants that were like kind of on the edge of being capable of growing, and they would thrive. I found out that they thrive. That's how I became an onion grower. I had no idea. But little by little, I was taking my lumps and learning what plants will actually grow through the winter. The plants taught me, and then the plants showed me who wanted a little protection. So we started offering a little bit of protection. We developed a hoop house system, and we never changed anything about how we grew. Like, I want to go on record as saying this, Paul. Like, the garden is just a garden, and we just put greenhouses on top of the garden. Didn't change the way we grow. We didn't. All we did was just covered that part of the garden up and kept right on trucking. So again, you've been my mentor for such a long time. You say things that you probably don't even know have impacted me. But one of the things that I recall that you said many years ago was that we don't get the same value of frutility out of our plants grown in the greenhouses. So I already kind of knew that because most of my greenhouse forays into greenhousing before that always ended in failure. they always ended in insects chewing my plants to pieces. And that was what sort of supplanted into my mind the idea that, well, Paul was right. He's like, you're never going to get a good plant out of this greenhouse. It's just never going to happen. You're not going to get a tomato that has the same value as the one that I grow just on the other side of the plastic. And then it happened. And then it happened. And I can laugh about it now because we learn from our experiences. And what happened was, just like I said, the aphids showed up and they made a mess of everything. And they showed me that plants don't like aphids. But this time I had greater resolve. This time I said, okay, no chemicals. I like literally, I like made an oath, Paul. I said, enough is enough. We're not doing chemicals because if the second I use chemicals, I've stooped to that level of the people that failed before me, that I failed alongside of, went to the chemicals to kill the aphids that entered the greenhouse. I was housing the aphids in the greenhouse, and the aphids were pollinating my peppers, and the aphids were pollinating all the plants. They were pollinating my tomatoes. I also grow flax. I don't know if you know familiar with flax. It has a very small flower on it. Well, you need a very small insect to pollinate a very small flower. So I started realizing, well, wait a second. You mean these aphids, the ants, maybe they're not the problem, they're a problem because I don't understand their reason for being. And for the first 2 years, we had aphids in both greenhouses. At one point, I had 4 greenhouses up. I gave up on 2 of them, but the other 2 still remained. And you know what happened? I, I mean, I mean this in the most sincere way. I asked for help with the greenhouse aphids because I suddenly felt maybe help isn't how to kill something. Maybe the help I needed was how to understand what was at work. Well, while I was trying to figure out what was at work, the ladybugs showed up in mass. I mean, like thousands of them. Like someone had put the hot sign, the donut sign up top of the building is now glowing hot. And I got thousands and thousands and thousands of ladybugs that showed up. Well, the following year, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the other really, really prolific aphid eater, the lacewing. insect showed up. So on one greenhouse I have lacewings, on the other greenhouse I have ladybugs. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with my banter and my brand, but one of the things I promote is you put one little speck of insecticide or anything in there, and those ladybugs and lacewings will flee. They will leave. They're not going to stay and tolerate you putting poison out. So as far as my voice is carrying through and over the mountains and over yonder, you're not going to use poison around beneficial insects and expect the beneficial insects to stick around. They won't. So I learned that the hard way. I had to swear away the chemicals, and then Mother Nature showed me what she could do. So we never really fully close up those greenhouses or hoop houses to keep them exclusive. They are open every single day of their life, and the life moves in there, and it does what it wants. And they're so packed full of fruit that it's, that's what makes me want to come here and talk to y'all good folk, is the fact that this is not something that our Father has given exclusively to Creedmoor theory. I can promise you all that. I'm not worthy of being the only person that this kind of blessing would be offered to. It's not even possible. Like, honestly, I'm a pretty good guy now, but like, I wasn't always a good guy. I mean, I was a soldier for 10 years. We do things. So it works for me, and I want to share that with all of you so that everyone out there can understand that this is not reserved for like one special person. I'm not special. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, I'm no more special than anyone else. Y'all are what's special. Everyone that decides to show up for these things, 20 people that decided to sit well, Creedmoor does this. Y'all are special. And the people that I grow food for, they're special. And the people that I learned from, they're special. There's one for the gal too, the guy and the gal, both of them. Um, I mean, what say y'all? Really, say it now. Ask anything about what I've spoken of. None of this is news to Paul. Trust me, folks. He's been around the block a few times. He knows all about this stuff. And this, to me, is like the greatest opportunity to ask a question when you know you're going to get the right answer. Um, I want to show everyone, the value of the back to Eden method. That's why I'm so committed to it. It might seem crazy. I know I get long-winded and write for hours. I talk for hours and write for hours. Thank that guy next to me because he's the guy that inspired me to do it all. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have met hopefully our next guest. Um, Honestly, like I was saying before, I'm super interested in the microbiology. I'm a researcher when it comes to microbiology. We utilize the lab in beneficial ways here at the garden to quantify, to count, to justify what we're doing with the compost, so that I can come to you and I can say, compost is where they all go to because I've taken the compost from not just myself but other growers, and we put it on a slide and we look at it under a microscope. And I already have this great working garden, folks. So all I have to do is go in the garden, take a soil sample, and take a snapshot of what it looks like with living soil, with all these microbes and all these protists and nematodes and bacteria swimming around in that little sample. And then I look at your compost and I say, well, you've got A, B, and C. You don't have D and E, but we can get D and E from this spot right here on your property. It's not hard. It's not. I mean, I would swear by teaching this stuff to your children as well, because once your children start to understand what underpins life, and that's life itself, they are going to be smart whippersnappers. You're going to teach them to connect dots that they will never connect by going to school. It just won't happen. I mean, I learned basic biology in school, but I didn't learn anything that is meaningful until after school, until after I became a gardener, until after I realized, oh, these are the bugs that keep my plants alive. For years we didn't know, had no idea. We just thought plants absorbed nutrients and they got really healthy. And then, we gave them 75 years of absorbing nutrients and we grew more insects than at any other point in all of humanity. because everything wants salt on its food. And that's what I try to. When someone asks me, say, "Hey, what do you tell old-time farmers?" Well, I'm surrounded by old-time farmers, and one by one, they're dropping like flies. You know what I tell them when they come in here? I tell them the same thing they told me when I started out. Everything likes salt on its food, including the insects. Why are the insects eating your plants and not mine? Because you feed your plants salt and I don't. You know, I mean, it's that guy said all this stuff in the movie, folks. He did. He was right. He was right. Switch to sugar. Sugar's more powerful. Catch more flies with honey. You catch more beneficial insects with sugar, with carbohydrates. And then those beneficial insects go on to support your plants and make your plants super, super strong. You know, we didn't talk a whole lot about yeast last time I was on. I can say a little bit about yeast because I also have a vineyard. Some of you that are from the 101 group, they know I've shared a whole lot about grapes and the vineyard and how it seems to be an exception to the rule in so many ways. The reality is that I make wine, and so every year I harvest my grapes, I freeze my grapes, they get frozen for about 60 days, and then we take them out of the freezer. Needless to say, we have lots of freezers, and then they get mashed into a mash to be used to make the wine. Well, in the end, I'm left with a whole bunch of skins and some seeds and a whole bunch of stuff, but there's lots of yeast in it. And I don't want to throw that stuff out. You know what I mean? I will take that wasted mash material and I will put it in my gardens. Usually I put it underneath my grapes, but I have spread it out all over the place like it's a compost. And what ends up happening is I learned a long time ago that when you spread this stuff out in the garden, yeast is another symbiote. Okay. Well, I'm asked how it is that I grow through the winter. I'm telling you, I use yeast as another soil symbiote because yeast takes sugar and converts sugar into two things, into methyl and ethyl alcohol. And when methyl and ethyl alcohol enter the tissues of the plant, it produces this, well, insurance policy for the plant. And what that insurance policy is it keeps the cells and chloroplasts from exploding due to freezing water of all things inside your plants. If the water freezes, it blows the leaf apart, it blows the tissue of the plant apart. But when the plant can send sugars into the soil, and there's fungi in the soil, and there's yeast in the soil, the plant will arrange the chemistry and the sugar very specifically so the yeast is more responsive than the fungi and the bacteria. The yeast then uses that fungi to make the antifreeze that the plants sip up through the rhizophagy cycle. The leaves turn reddish, purplish, and that's how we know a chemical called anthocyanin was produced in this process. And that's how we know our plant is now freeze proof. All from soil biology, folks. So if you till your dirt, all of these relationships die.
Mhm.
And then you don't have plants that can have, well, insulation at their feet and can have chemistries that keep their cells from freezing. Because if the cells don't freeze, plant can stay living indefinitely. And um, I've talked and written about that quite a bit. So I hope it's not the first time some of you are hearing it, but it is how things work. So I support it by not throwing my mash away in the garbage. Instead, I put it at the feet of my grapevines. And the grapes respond by giving me massive, gigantic grapes that are really, really sweet. It's not uncommon for me to get 100 to 200 pounds per plant. So there you have it.
Right. Carl Edwards just made a comment. He just watched The Biggest Little Farm. That's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to watch it. It's really, really great. Biggest Little Farm.
Hey, J Buck, that's streaming free, I believe. This will be one of those moments where I would probably go to YouTube and snag a link and put it in the comments for everybody. You don't have to. Just saying, that's like a Creedmoorian thing. Never mind. Forget I said it. I can't do it because I don't have the power to do it on this side. I'm locked out. Yeah, that's a fantastic movie. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, Abby's interested in knowing what I grow. Okay, that's a pretty long list. I grow most of the nightshade family. I grow most of the brassica family, some of the coal family, most of the cucurbit family, and fruit trees and nut trees, and fig trees, and cherry trees. That wasn't helpful, was it, Paul? I grow all of the alliums. I gotta step it back again. If Carol was standing there, she would say, step it down a little bit. All right. I grow onions, several different types of onions, large, small, bunching, green, leafy, and walkers in particular. I really love growing walking onions, Egyptian walking onions, because I believe they're a fertility enhancement tool, and it's a great border for your gardens. Within the borders, I grow usually 2 or 3 different types of broccoli, 1 or 2 different types of cabbages. I like cabbage. Recently stopped growing. This is a cool one. I recently did stop growing one nightshade because my wife doesn't like it. Eggplant. Yeah, I grew that one for years and years and years, and then finally in 2023, she said, "I don't know why you grow eggplant. I don't even like eggplant," so I stopped growing it. But garlics, we grow our own garlics. They started as store-bought garlics. I got scapes. I got seeds. I got cloves. I just continue to grow them over and over and over again. There's always 1 or 2 plots of garlic grown. I like to grow 1 or 2 types of carrots as well. And then, of course, all the other roots, the radishes. I love radish. I just do. I like to cut them up and just like I take them to lunch and just eat slices of them. I don't know why. I don't think everybody likes radish. But I like turnips too, and we grow those. So pretty much most all of the root crops, I'd love to grow at least one representative from each of those families. And then the herbs. We grow 5 or 6 different types of herbs. We grow thyme, we grow oregano. I have some really amazing oregano plants. They are massive. Their diameter is about 4 or 5 feet around, and today they're standing about a foot tall. They're just blown up. And folks, grow oregano. Okay, it tolerates the cold. It'll go right through the cold, and then once the temperature comes up, it'll push flowers, real small flowers, and the honeybees will show up. So okay, this is a better way for me to approach this. What do I grow? I grow as much that I can get in the ground that will support the local honeybee population because I love seeing them in the garden. And if it has a small, shallow flower, I tend to grow it. I really like growing nasturtium. I grow columbine in the garden. I grow marigold as companions in the garden. Um, Really, that's a big one. I like to put marigold everywhere because when you put one of the little tiny little store-bought marigolds in your garden, and it'll be a monster by season's end. Really, it'll be 3 feet around and 3 feet tall. Even if it's not the giant marigolds, they just grow massive. What do I not grow? This is a better place to try. I try not to grow plants that are exclusive. If they like to grow by themselves, I usually grow them by themselves. So in particular, one that I like to grow by itself is the sunflower. I grow them in a completely separate bed away from my main garden near my corn. And they tend to do a little bit better over there because the clay is a little harder and they tend to root right into the dirt. And that way they stand up stronger. If they grow only in the wood chips and it's the giant variety, they tend to kind of flop over. And we figured out a while ago if you can just get them to grow in the dirt, they do fine. So yeah, so that one is we sort of like kicked it out of Eden, and it grows on the other side of the fence, but it's still part of our family. You know what I mean? We don't hate on it. We still love it. It attracts lots of bees. So if it attracts bees, we like to grow it. I think that's kind of like what underpins my choices, my selections for the spring and summer and early fall seasons. I want to get something there that's going to attract those bugs. I just gotta have them. Asparagus. That was another good one, Paul. When I first entered Eden, they said, no, asparagus doesn't grow in wood chips. They lied. They were either
should.
lying to me or they were just wrong. because I tell I tell a lot of folks that the second I see the asparagus pop up, spring is on. It's
Yeah.
like it's it's the harbinger of spring. It says
Mhm.
there's enough moisture, there's enough sunlight, my soil temperature is above 60 degrees. This is a fantastic time to start putting spears up. And we're getting a knot like this every day now, every day. And they're
Wow.
just growing in the wood chips. I don't do anything special, folks. I know I've written about it a lot about how, what I do like to do is with my compost in the fall, I've taken all of the ferns down once they become completely tan. Once the chlorophyll is gone, they're no longer pushing sugars into the roots. I cut them down until they're about 4 inches tall. And what that does is that gives me a marker, just like a little runway to see. And then I put my compost right on top of them, just like 12 inches wide. And if there are any asparagus seeds, this is a trick picker for anyone who's expanding their plots. If there are asparagus seeds, they're in these little tiny little red pods. There's 3, 4, or 5 seeds inside them. And what you can do, what I like to do, not every year, but maybe every fourth year, is I'll let the ferns fall sideways. And then I actually rake up those seeds into the center of that compost that I laid, and then we grow more asparagus. So we get more asparagus that grows that way. But I don't do it every year because we don't need that much. I probably, for a family of 4, I have about 80 plants. So I think that's probably a good measure for anyone who is wondering, how many spears do I buy? Well, you buy those little packs and you get like 3 of them for like $6. It's ridiculous. It's expensive here, and the seeds work beautifully. They work fine. I don't know why I ever, you know, didn't just use the seeds. Really, they grow so great. But that little bit of compost that I put on the fall enriches the soil. The ferns have been growing usually for a couple of months at that point. I don't cut all the ferns down. I let them grow, and they help the root to regenerate. The compost is there if it needs it. If it doesn't need it, it's not there. But it shows me where not to walk. That's the point. The point of all this is I see the brown compost right over the top of my spears, right over the top of my root system. And I don't want to walk there in the fall or the winter when I'm doing maintenance on a garden. So between those little narrow rows of compost, I just put regular wood chips. So you have this kind of light tan, dark brown, light tan, dark brown, light tan. It delineates the area. It makes it so it's kind of idiot proof. So if I have guests in the garden, I can say stay on the tan, and you're in the middle of my giant asparagus plot. And in the winter you can't really visualize it so much, but come back now and it's like, wow, they're as big as my thumb. That's a big thumb too. Like even for like
Anyway,
humans, that's really
someone
big.
brought up something about voles. Voles, they have runways, and they're killing these guys' trees. And what I do for them is I get a number 2 rabbit trap, and I'll lay it right in their runway, and I catch them every time. It's totally effective, and I get rid of all my voles that way. Just a good rabbit trap, number 2 rabbit trap, because they stay in their runways. And so if you got wood chips, you could just back the wood chips up, lay that right in level with the wood chips. They come running through, they don't see it, and I catch them all the time.
Ooh, I like it. People are interacting there. That's what I've been hoping for. So Abram Matthews got a pretty big garden. It sounds like 50 by 100. Oh, is that what they're talking about? How you find the volunteers? That's cool, J Buck. Yeah. Yeah, they just sort of pop up.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds like Carl Edwards is talking about using a camera to just snap a shot of where he had them and then he knows where they are. Yeah, you get pretty intimate with your garden after a while. And it's like they kind of will come up pretty consistently where they like it. Yes. Cilantro. You guys growing cilantro over there, Paul? That's what love. I love it too. I just love it. Yeah. Yeah, it repopulates itself. I love it. Another one that we do the same thing with is dill. I do the Three Sisters in the corn area, but I also have dill in there because dill is such a fantastic, it has such great insecticide properties that you know it when you're getting near the corn plot because you can smell the dill from a half mile away.
Right. Boy, the challenge, and
It goes everywhere.
it's everywhere.
It is.
It's
It
oh
actually
man.
is. Yeah, I think it's going to cover the whole entire plot, and that's kind of what I'm shooting for. I
Yeah,
want it
it
to,
it
yeah, I
it
want it to
totally
cover
takes
that
over.
whole plot. And my wife loves to come out and
It'll
she'd just reach in and snip some off, and it's like, why didn't I think of that? It's so easy. Oh, okra plants. So J Buck's got the okras that are coming in from last year's seeds. We don't really consider those to be plants here because okra grows as a tree in the same season. It is often for me to plant. I see 3 seeds hit the ground. We'll get 3 or 4 trees will come up. I don't know why. 3 seeds, 4 trees. I don't know if they split themselves in the ground or what, but holy cow. Oh, and then at the end of the season, you got to use a saw to cut the tree. They love back to Eden.
Yep.
Yes, that's really a great thing to say you said there, J Buck. Or if you compost the vegetables and the seeds didn't, I say they didn't sterilize. You put the compost down, then they're going to be in it. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I've come uh, accustomed to doing is if you can't get your compost hot enough to sterilize the seeds, it's okay to let the temperature be down and maybe periodically just turn the whole entire pile over. The seeds will come to the edges and they'll germinate. And then you can pull plants from your compost pile and put them in your garden. We did that for a little while too until I finally learned to get the compost pile hot enough to sterilize the seeds. But you see what I mean? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You want the plants to plant themselves, and once you get the whole system going where you're composting your old plants, you're going to cut down greatly on the amount of volunteers you get from your compost, but you're still going to get volunteers that still come up. I wouldn't even have it any other way. Some of the best tomatoes we've ever gotten were from volunteers, and some of the most insect-resistant plants show up as volunteers. Um, I liken it to the fact that that seed has all the soil biology it needs because it sat on that soil all fall and all winter, and the rain hit it, and the compost tea soaked up around it, and all the biology said, "Hey, this is the place I want to begin my life from." And spring hits, and bam, you get the strongest tomato plant you've ever seen. Um, who else likes to work that way? Oh gosh, pumpkins, they do the same thing, right? Leave one pumpkin in your field and you'll have 100 the next season. Cantaloupe, that's another one. It's easy to get a lot of cantaloupe because they produce so many seeds, and the leaf cover is so thick and so dense, especially if you grow them with the squash plants, that often we'll like forget 1 whole or 2 whole cantaloupe, and the next year, bam, you got cantaloupes again. So I consider all those things to be blessings. If you take a picture of those plants as they rise, you're going to get the exact rise date. If you know that it is a 7-day germinant, you can count back 7 days. If it's a 14-day germinant, you can count back 14 days, mark that date on your calendar, and the following year, if you choose to do so, that will be your sowing date. So it tells us a lot when we get a volunteer. We can learn a lot from them. You can learn exactly when your region should have those plants applied to the soil. Nice. Yeah, see that, Paul? You see what you did there?
Mm.
Mr. Anderson
But
said that he's been encouraged to plant things, some things that he even might have not preferred before, but then they grew in his back to Eden garden, and he tasted them, and now he likes them because they taste better.
yeah,
Isn't that such a great selling point? It really is. I mean, it
yes,
all tastes better.
nutrient dense food is delicious. It's really good, really good.
I'm so behind. Oh man. Oh, it's only available on premium subscription. Okay, see, I don't know what's going on in the world. Garlic and onions, yes. When you have a border of garlic, does that affect the flavor of other veggies grown in the bed, like tomatoes, cooks, and peppers? That's a fantastic question. I
I
haven't
haven't
noticed it.
noticed it. I
I
haven't.
haven't. Wow. And I mean, I kind of wish I did because then I could comment on it, but
Yeah,
I
I
just
haven't
haven't.
noticed any change.
Yeah, I guess Anderson feels the same way. I don't think it does. Maybe it could. I don't know what it would take to do it though. The soil is so diverse and so spacious. Like with the root crops, you can plant them so much more densely in the back to Eden soils, and then as they start to come up, they sort of just push each other out of the way, and
Yeah, that's
you
the
can
beauty
maybe,
of it. Yeah,
yeah, just pick one, eat
because the
it, and the
soil's
one
not
next to it has
compacted; it
space.
moves. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
great. I
it
mean,
makes the plant.
oh, I can say it didn't do that in the clay. When I grew in the red clay, where it went was where
No
it
way. Yeah,
stayed.
for sure. Yeah.
It just
Well.
rot. It would rot.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, Anderson, you're right. Why do we work so hard? They want to propagate and reproduce. It took me, really, it did. It took me more than 7 years to figure that out. I guess we arrive at these places maybe at different points on our journey. And I wasn't really capable of picking up on these things. I just wasn't astute enough to realize it early on. To be perfectly honest with you, that gentleman opened my eyes quite a bit as well. We had a lot of discussions about growing, and it's great to talk about growing. I think that's been one of the most instrumental things that I've done as a grower is to talk to other growers who know things, who have other experiences. They may have seen something that we didn't get to see yet. They may know a way to do something that just didn't come across yet. All right, so we reach a little bit of a quiet point. I can go ahead and I can share with y'all some of the actual ways that I've managed to add more fungi to the garden. Um, every year, we North Carolina gets these sporadic rains where the soil moisture content goes way up, and it almost causes like a period of time, like a window, like 1 or 2 weeks. It's usually on the front end of spring. This year, it didn't happen. Everything was backwards this year. I can't even pick up on nature's cues this year. I'm really confused. But what ends up happening is we get these flushes. That's what it's called when mycology produces a fruited body. It flushes the fruited body up topside so it's visible. And I go out with my little Google mushroom identifying tool and take pictures of the tops and the bottoms of the mushrooms. And then I identify them, figure out what they are, and then I will collect some. And almost every single time, what I'm doing is collecting a type of a mushroom that was already in place, feeding the soil food web. It was already taking part in reconstitution of soils. So I just collect them. And anytime you have a mushroom and it rains, the rain hits the top of the cap on the mushroom, and a small portion of this moisture circles back up to the underside of the veil, and the spores drop out of the fruited body onto the ground. And then they splash around with moisture, and the moisture takes them all over the place. Typically, if there's an elevation change, you can see one mushroom up high, and however you would imagine the water would follow down to a lower gradient, that's where the other mushrooms would be. So we've learned to hunt for them using those strategies in our forests here nearby. And after a while, you start to get to know some of the most common ones. You can actually go out and you can find some common mushrooms that you can take home and eat. You foraged for them, they're edible, you eat them. And the parts that I wouldn't eat, I would put in a 5-gallon pail full of non chlorinated water. So, that same principle where when it rains, the rain hits the top of the mushroom, it taps the top of the mushroom, and the spores start to release. Same exact thing. You just drop them into that water, get saturated by the water, and then within about 24 hours, the whole entire pail is full of spores, billions of spores. It's not difficult. From here, I know you can all pretty much imagine what we do with them. If I get wood chips in and I've got wood chips that are sitting around and they're 3 or 4 months old, I'll just go up about 12 to 16 inches above the ground and I'll move some chips out of the way and I'll pour all of this mushroom tea onto the chips, and cover it back up and walk away. It's that simple. It's easy. And now maybe I foraged 5 or 6 different types of mushrooms. That's 5 or 6 different types that will now grow when the conditions are right for them to grow. It could be a year from them. It could be 2 years from them. It could be a week. It could be the next time it rains. The wood chips might be young. They might still have too many antifungal compounds in them. So if that's the case, once the antifungal compounds leach out, again, the spores will begin to grow. His system is so wonderful, you almost can't lose. It works so well, you almost can't screw it up. So, on one side, we're collecting the fungi, on the other side, we're collecting compost. And before you know it, fall hits. And, we're making some of our final withdrawals from the garden. We're trying to decide, do we yank everything out? What do we do with it? I can tell you what I do, folks. I cut the plant right off at the base. I leave the roots because I want the soil relationships to stay. Even after we take the top of the plant off, that root still holds moisture and it still holds life. And many times it might have a relationship with a root that's nearby. In forests, we see this happening when a gigantic tree is cut down. That root, that stump stays living for years and years and years and years. As a matter of fact, the trees that are around it will often form connections or have already formed connections to the roots that will keep that root alive because they know already, after billions of years of evolution, how important it is to have this level of diversity. So it works the same way in the garden. And guess, folks, it's just principles. It's nothing other than that. It really is. When you adhere to the principles, good things happen. Jay Buck's got some big mushrooms growing at his place. That is good news, especially since it's been raining over there for 40 days and 40 nights. Texas floods. I think he finally saw some sunshine today, if I recall correctly, which is great, fantastic, because our plants need sunlight. And we've been under cloud and rain for the past 3 days. I just assume this is what J Buck had over there in Texas. It finally made it to North Carolina. 39 days. Right? That sounds right. I see. S. Elliott found a big yellow one today. I swear it wasn't there 3 days ago. Oh, we like the yellow ones. I like the colorful ones. Um, Definitely don't eat it. Especially if it's one of those magic mushrooms. You're probably going to be better off not eating it, or find a friend who will eat it for you. But the reality of it is, folks, that if you're going to find a fruited body on a mushroom, 99% of the time it's going to be beneficial inside your back to Eden soils. You can hydrospore it. You can put it in a bucket and chop it up into a bunch of little bits. It's no more difficult than preparing dinner for your family. You drop it into the pail. You don't even have to stir it. They release automatically. You can cover it so trash doesn't get into it. And then in a day, you just take it outside and boil it on your wood chips. It's so nonchalant, and it doesn't take a science degree. It doesn't take 8 years of biology schooling. It doesn't. Mother Nature just works this way. And heck, half of the stuff, even though I learned it from a book, I didn't really learn it until I saw Mother Nature do it. You know what I mean? I mean, your book says one thing, then you go outside and you try to apply it in a practical sense, and it's like, this doesn't even compute. Why'd they leave this part out? But it's because you can't get it all from the book. You need to learn it from your environment. Jay Buck doesn't like to touch any wild mushrooms. He's heard some can be dangerous to touch. Hmm. Yeah. Yep. There are some that can be dangerous to touch. There are some caterpillars that are dangerous to touch too, so we shouldn't touch them either. Um, you're fine. The real issue with them is you don't want to consume them because all of them are not consumable. Many of them you can consume, but they'll make you out of your mind. And then some of them, like turkey tail, you can consume them in little tiny, tiny little bits, and they do amazing things. They help improve clarity of thought. They help rewire the neural center in your brain. They do all of those things. Microdosing with those mushrooms that can have a profound effect on your physiology. It can repair things in your brain that were broken for years and years and years. So turkey tail is an absolutely phenomenal mushroom that grows wild almost in every state in our country. There are other ones that are even more beneficial than that. If I would have given enough thought, I guess I could have done a whole entire spot on them. But mycology is really, really beneficial to us folks. It really is. Mushrooms that we don't see are as important or more important than the mushrooms that we do see. There should be two-thirds of mushroom existence should be in the soil, with only a third popping up above the soil, only at those opportune moments when soil moisture goes way up. It triggers fruiting, and fruiting is procreation. So that cycle of life happens because of the hydrology coming from the sky. So of course they're wonderful, and there's such a small amount of mushrooms that are not good that in my own mind it doesn't even make sense to mention them. But I'll give you one example. Chicken of the woods is a mushroom that, well, kind of tastes like chicken, and it's orangey and it grows really, really big. But well, it likes to. Sometimes they like to kill trees. So some mushrooms like to kill trees, but they taste good. Does that make it a good mushroom? I don't know. You got to use your best judgment for it. If I had chicken in the woods, would I put the spores in my garden? Probably not. And the reason I want to say this is I probably wouldn't, because if I did get it to sporulate and it did decide it wanted to colonize a greater area, then I would feel really bad if I started losing trees in my windrows to a pathogenic, you know, fungi. So in that particular case, you just put it on the plate, cook it, and eat it. It really tastes good. Your yellow mushroom, that's Elliot. It was um, it was probably a magic mushroom. So yeah, you're okay. Just don't lick your fingers. It could be said that if you're in a period of time where you're experiencing a lot of moisture, that's going to be a great time to consider, well, moisture. With that moisture is going to bring more fruited bodies. If you find fruited bodies around your property, it doesn't hurt to pick a few of them. Really, I mean, you can pick them. Hmm, that's interesting. Paul's gone, and or am I gone? This is why they should give the guest speaker a chat bot too. A little chat bot say, "Hey, what's going on?" Okay, so I'm still here. Oh gosh, folks, this is definitely not how I planned for this to go. I'm not even sure what to do. But you know what? I can do this. At least I can do this. I don't have the ability to because I don't have the little dots in the upper right hand corner. It says 24 in my upper right hand corner. But if you're on Android, take this moment to go up there and touch it with your finger. It'll take you to a place where you can click the like. And if I'm not mistaken, you can also subscribe there. But get a chance to do that.